The great hall of the alien empire was silent yet full of fear. Tall crystal pillars shined with cold light, and soldiers in black armor stood like statues along the walls. At the very center, on a throne made of silver stone, sat the alien, Empress. Her eyes were sharp as blades, her face calm but colder than ice. No one in the galaxy dared to speak too loudly in her presence. One word from her could end a life. Everyone knew her as a ruler without mercy. She never laughed. She never smiled. The court whispered that her heart was made of stone. And perhaps it was true, because beside her throne sat her daughter, the lonely alien princess. The princess was small and quiet, with gentle eyes and a body weakened by an old accident. Her leg was crippled, and she walked with great difficulty. The nobles ignored her, the warriors mocked her in silence, and the empress herself showed no warmth. The child sat each day with empty eyes as if she was only a shadow. The great banquet began. Musicians played their strange alien songs, nobles raised their jeweled cups, and food was brought from every corner of the empire. The empress sat still, watching everything with a frozen stare. Among the servants moving quietly in the hall was a young human. He was not a soldier, not a noble, not a leader. He was only a waiter, carrying food and drink to the tables. His clothes were simple, his steps careful. To most he was invisible, but fate had chosen him for something greater. The human noticed the princess. She sat in silence, her eyes looking down untouched by joy. Around her, laughter and music filled the air, but she was an island of sadness. No one dared to speak to her. No one dared to make her smile. The human's heart was moved. He thought, she is just a child, why does no one care? For a moment he stopped working and simply watched her. He saw the loneliness in her face. It was the same loneliness he had once felt as a boy, when no one came to his side. The empress's eyes caught the movement. Her gaze turned to the human, sharp and dangerous. For a second the human's breath froze. A single mistake could mean death. He lowered his head quickly and continued his work, pretending nothing had happened, but the thought did not leave him. He kept glancing at the princess. She was so small in her chair, so fragile, so unwanted. A heavy sadness filled his chest. He whispered in his mind, if no one else will care, maybe I should. The minutes passed. The music grew louder. The nobles danced in the center of the hall and the guards stood stiff. But the princess sat untouched, ignored like a broken toy. Then something strange happened. The girl lifted her eyes and met the human's gaze. It was only for a second, but in her eyes he saw a question. Will you come? Will you notice me? His heart beat faster. He had no power, no right, no permission. But in that moment he could not look away. The empress noticed again. Her gaze sharpened like a knife. The hall grew colder. Every noble felt the change in the air. Some looked at the human and whispered. Others smirked, expecting his end. But the human did not stop looking at the princess. Something inside him refused to bow to fear. He felt her pain too deeply. The music slowed. The air thickened. The human's hands trembled as he placed the tray down. He took a step forward, small and careful but clear enough for all to see. Gasps echoed in the hall. The nobles froze mid-bite. The guards' hands went to their weapons. The alien empress leaned forward slightly. Her eyes glowed like frozen fire. The silence was so heavy that even the musicians stopped. The human had broken the unspoken law. No one approached the princess, no one dared to care for her, yet he took another step, and another. His eyes never left the girl's face. The princess blinked, her lips trembling as if she could not believe what she saw. The empress's hand rested on the arm of her throne. With a single gesture, she could end this foolish human's life. The court waited. The air was heavy with fear. The human stopped just a few feet away from the princess. He bowed his head slightly, then slowly reached out his hand toward her. The hall was silent as a grave. Everyone knew. If the empress gave the order, This human would be dead before he could breathe again. The princess looked at the hand. Her fingers shook. For the first time in years, her eyes widened with a spark of hope. And at that moment, the Empress's cold gaze locked onto the human like a blade ready to strike. The hall remained frozen in silence. The young human stood just a few feet away from the alien princess, his hand reaching out, trembling but steady with courage. Every noble in the room held their breath. The guards were ready to strike. The alien empress did not move, but her eyes burned like fire hidden under ice. For years, she had allowed no one to come close to her daughter, not out of love, but out of shame. The crippled child was a wound in her heart, a memory she could never erase. She had built walls of stone around herself and the girl, daring anyone to step inside. And now, a mere human servant had crossed that line. The princess's small hand hovered uncertainly. Her heart beat fast. Never before had anyone reached for her like this, not the nobles, not the warriors, not even her mother. Her life had been a cage of silence. But here was a stranger, a human, offering his hand as if she were not broken at all. The Empress leaned forward slightly. Every alien noble expected her to give the order to kill, but she said nothing. She simply stared, her face like carved stone. The human's hand shook, but he did not pull it back. He whispered softly, so only the girl could hear. "Would you like to dance?" The princess gasped. Her eyes widened. A dance? No one had ever asked her such a thing. Her crippled leg made walking painful. Dancing was something she had never dreamed of. And yet she wanted it. She wanted it more than anything. The hall remained silent. The girl looked at the Empress, then at the human, and then back again. Her lip trembled. Slowly, carefully, she lifted her small hand and placed it into his. The hall erupted with gasps. Nobles covered their mouths. Some whispered, "Impossible." Others sneered, "This human is a fool." The guards tensed, waiting for the Empress's command. But the Empress gave no signal. She only watched. Her face showed nothing. Yet deep, inside, her heart trembled. The human smiled gently at the princess. "It's all right," he said softly. "Just one step. We'll take it slow." The musicians hesitated, their instruments half raised. They looked at the Empress, waiting for her sign. Still, she gave none. So the human began to hum a simple rhythm, a tune from Earth, soft, slow, and full of warmth. The sound was strange, in the great alien hall, but it carried a magic stronger than music. The human stepped back slightly, guiding the girl's hand. She tried to follow. Her steps were clumsy, uneven. Her leg dragged behind, but he did not let her fall. He held her, steady, his smile never fading. The princess's eyes filled with surprise. For the first time, someone did not laugh at her weakness. Someone did not pity her. Someone believed she could move. And slowly, shakily, she began to move with him. One step, then another. The two of them formed a fragile dance in the middle of the banquet hall. The nobles whispered furiously, "This is madness. The Empress will kill him. How dare a human touch the princess?" Yet no one dared to move without the Empress's order. The Empress's hands tightened on the arms of her throne. Her soldiers looked at her, waiting for the command to strike. But she stayed silent, her eyes locked on the human and her daughter. And then something happened that the court could not believe. The princess laughed. It was a small sound, shaky and nervous, but it was laughter. Her face, usually pale with sadness, lit up with joy as she took another step, leaning on the human for strength. The hall froze. The music stopped completely. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The Empress's heart cracked. For years she had not heard her daughter laugh. For years she had hidden her away, too ashamed of the child's weakness to let her live freely. And now, before her eyes, a human, a creature she saw as nothing more than a servant, had given her daughter what she could not. The Empress rose slowly from her throne. The hall shook with fear. The guards stepped forward. The nobles backed away. The musicians dropped their instruments. The human looked up, his smile fading. He still held the princess's hand, protecting her behind him. His heart raced, but he did not let go. The empress's cloak dragged across the floor as she stepped down from her throne. Her eyes glowed with cold fire. She walked toward them, each step echoing like thunder in the silent hall. The nobles whispered in terror. She will kill him now. This is the end. No one survives the empress's anger. The human stood tall, his hand still holding the princess's. His voice was calm but steady as he said, "She just needed someone to believe in her." The empress stopped just a few feet away. Her gaze burned into the human soul. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had frozen. And then she spoke, her voice sharp as a blade. "Enough." The word hung in the air like thunder. Enough. The empress's voice was cold, sharp, and final. The entire hall froze. The nobles lowered their heads. The guards gripped their weapons, ready to strike. The human's heart pounded, but he held the little princess's hand tighter, refusing to let her go. The princess trembled, fear returning to her face. She had laughed only moments ago, and now she looked at her mother, terrified that the human who gave her hope would be killed. Before her eyes, the empress's long cloak swept the ground as she stepped closer. Her golden crown gleamed in the crystal light. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes burned with an intensity that silenced even the whispers of the nobles. The human bowed his head slightly, but he did not release the princess's hand. His voice was calm, though his body shook. "She smiled," he said softly. "She laughed. That's all I wanted." The words shocked the hall. No one spoke to the empress this way. No one dared to explain themselves. Nobles expected her rage. Guards waited for the order to strike, but the empress did not give the signal. She looked at her daughter. The child's eyes were wide and filled with tears, not of sadness but of fear that the moment of joy would be taken away. The empress raised her hand. The human closed his eyes, ready for the end, but instead of striking him down, the empress gestured to the musicians. "Play," she commanded. Gasps filled the room. The musicians hesitated, confused. One by one, they raised their instruments. The sound of strings and drums returned, soft and uncertain like the beating of a nervous heart. The empress's gaze returned to the human. "Dance," she ordered. The court froze in shock. The guards looked at each other in disbelief. The nobles whispered furiously. Never before had anyone disobeyed the rules of the empress and lived. Yet this human was being told to continue. The princess blinked, her mouth opening in surprise. Her mother had not stopped the dance. She had not punished the human. She wanted it to go on. The human looked into the girl's eyes and smiled gently. "Shall we?" he whispered. The princess nodded slowly, her small hand still trembling in his. The music grew louder. The human guided her gently, step by step. She stumbled, her crippled leg dragging, but he steadied her. His movements were slow, patient, filled with kindness. The princess's eyes lit up. Her fear began to fade. She took another step, then another. The human hummed softly along with the music, and soon the two of them were moving together in a fragile but beautiful dance. The nobles watched, in silence. Their sneers faded, their whispers died. One by one, their faces turned from mockery to awe. The empress stood still, her hands folded before her. Her face gave away nothing, but deep inside, something was breaking. She had not seen her daughter, this alive in years. The laughter, the light in her eyes, it was something she had thought lost forever. The princess laughed again, louder this time. It was a sound that spread across the hall like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The human smiled, spinning her carefully, letting her feel like she was not weak, not broken, but special. The court was silent, but the empress's mind was not. Memories flooded back, the day of the accident, the screams, the endless nights, when her daughter cried in pain. She had built walls around her heart, convincing herself it was better not to feel. But here, now, a simple human was tearing those walls apart with nothing but a dance. The music swelled. The princess's joy grew. The human's steady courage shone brighter than the jewels of the nobles. And then, something unthinkable happened. The empress smiled. It was small, almost invisible, but it was real. The court gasped. Some dropped their cups. Others fell to their knees in disbelief. The alien empress, known for her frozen heart, had shown emotion. The human saw it too. He glanced at her quickly, then looked back to the princess. He did not speak, but his heart knew he had done something no one else could. The dance continued. The princess leaned against him, her laughter ringing clear. For the first time in her life, she felt free. For the first time, she felt seen. But, as joy filled the hall, dark whispers began among the nobles. They did not like what they saw. Change was dangerous. A smile from the empress was not hope. It was a threat to their power. One noble, his eyes narrow with anger, whispered to another, "This cannot be allowed. A human changing the empress? If she softens, our hold on her will weaken." Another noble nodded. "Yes. If she shows mercy, she will no longer be feared. We must act." The two exchanged a silent agreement. Their eyes shifted toward the guards. Their plan was clear. The dance was not over, but danger was rising again. The princess laughed once more, her voice echoing like music itself. The human spun her slowly, careful not to hurt her. The empress stood still, her face unreadable, but her heart alive with feelings she had buried long ago. And then, behind the walls of the hall, a shadow moved. A secret order was already being carried out. The music played on, soft but steady. The human guided the princess in slow circles, his hand gentle, his eyes kind. She laughed again, the sound sweet and full of life. For the first time in many years, the great hall did not feel like a place of ice and fear. It felt warm. It felt alive. But not everyone welcomed this change. In the corners of the banquet hall, whispers began. Nobles leaned close to one another, their jeweled faces hard with anger. "This is dangerous," one hissed. "The empress must not change. Her strength is her coldness. If she softens, she will no longer be feared." Another nodded sharply. "Look at her," she smiled. "Do you not see what that means? A human, a mere servant, has done what none of us could. If he gains her favor, we will lose our power." Behind them, a third noble sneered. "We cannot allow this dance to go on. We must act, before the empress forgets who she is." The whispers spread like poison. While the empress stood still, her eyes fixed on her daughter, a storm of betrayal brewed behind her back. The guards noticed the nobles' movements, but they did not dare interrupt. Their duty was to follow the empress, and she had given no command. Yet their hands stayed on their weapons, uncertain of what was to come. The human continued dancing, unaware of the danger. He only saw the joy on the princess's face, the sparkle in her eyes. Her steps were still weak, but he supported her, letting her feel strong, letting her believe. The princess whispered softly, "Thank you." The human smiled. "You're welcome. You are not broken. You're wonderful." Her eyes shone with tears, not of sadness, but of happiness. No one had ever told her such words before. The empress heard them. Her heart stirred again. She looked at her daughter with a gaze the court had never seen. It was not the look of a ruler, it was the look of a mother, and that terrified the nobles even more. One noble, braver, or perhaps more foolish than the others, stepped forward. He bowed deeply, but his voice was sharp. "Great Empress," he said, "this human insults your honor. He dares to touch the princess as if he were of royal blood. Shall we allow such disrespect? The galaxy will see this as weakness." The hall went silent. All eyes turned to the empress. The human froze, still holding the princess's hand. The girl looked at her mother with pleading eyes, afraid that her moment of happiness would be stolen away. The empress did not answer at once. She stared at the noble, her face calm but unreadable. The silence stretched, heavy as iron. Finally she spoke. "Do you call my daughter's laughter weakness?" The noble's face paled. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The empress's gaze cut through him like a blade. "No," he whispered at last, trembling. "Of course not, my empress." The empress's voice rose, sharp and commanding. "Then be silent." The noble bowed low and stumbled back, his face red with shame. The court murmured in shock. Never before had the empress defended her daughter so openly. The human's heart lifted. He looked at the princess and whispered, "She's protecting you." The girl smiled softly, though tears filled her eyes. But in the shadows, the nobles were not defeated. They leaned closer together, whispering with venom, "She is blinded. The human has bewitched her. We must strike soon, tonight, before his influence grows. Yes, if we wait, he may survive, and if he survives, everything changes." Their eyes turned to the guards. A plan was forming, one that could end the human's life before dawn. The dance went on. Step by step, the princess grew stronger. The empress's gaze softened with every laugh. The court was torn, half in awe, half in fear. Then, suddenly, the music stopped. The musicians' hands froze. The sound of strings and drums died away. A chilling silence filled the hall. Everyone turned to see why. At the far side of the room, a group of nobles had risen from their seats. Their faces were hard, their eyes blazing. One of them stepped forward. "This must end," he declared. His voice echoed through the hall. "The empress is being deceived. A human servant dares to command her heart. We will not allow it." The guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to act. The empress stood still, her face unreadable, her silence dangerous. The human pulled the princess close, shielding her. His eyes narrowed. He knew what was coming. The nobles raised their hands, signaling their guards. Weapons gleamed in the cold light. The air grew heavy with the promise of violence. The princess gasped and held tightly to the human's hand. The human whispered, "Stay behind me." The empress's eyes narrowed at the rebels, her power filling the hall like a storm about to break. The hall was heavy with silence. The rebels stood tall, their eyes filled with anger, their weapons gleaming. The loyal guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to move. The music had stopped, and only the sound of the princess's nervous breath could be heard. The empress remained, still. Her golden crown shone in the cold light, her face unreadable, but her eyes burned with hidden fire. The human held the princess close, his hand steady though his heart pounded. He was only a waiter, only a servant. But at that moment, he stood like a shield between the girl and the storm. The leading rebel noble pointed his blade toward the human. "He is nothing," the noble shouted. "A servant who dares to touch the princess. A human who dares to steal the empress's heart. He has bewitched her, and if we do not stop this now, the empire will fall into weakness." Gasps filled the hall. No one ever spoke to the empress in such a way. Yet the noble's words echoed with the fear of many others who stayed silent. The princess shook her head, her small voice trembling. "No, he is kind. He made me laugh." Her words cut through the air, fragile but powerful. For the first time, she defended someone in front of the court. The empress's fingers tightened on her throne. She looked at her daughter and her heart cracked again. Memories struck her like lightning. The day of the accident, the cries of her little girl, the shame she had buried, the pain she had hidden. She had locked her heart away, believing it was strength. But now, as she saw her daughter cling to the human, she realized it had been weakness all along. Her heart was breaking open piece by piece. The rebel noble sneered. "Do not listen to the child's foolishness. She knows nothing. The human is dangerous. If you are blind, then we will act for the safety of the empire." He raised his blade higher. His soldiers stepped forward. The human's pulse thundered in his ears. He knew he could not fight them all. Yet he stood firm, refusing to release the girl's hand. He whispered to her softly, Don't be afraid. I won't let them hurt you. Tears filled her eyes. You'll die, she whispered back. He smiled faintly. If that's the price to keep you safe, then so be it. The Empress heard those words. Her chest tightened. No alien noble, no general, no warrior had ever spoken such loyalty for her daughter. And this came not from power or bloodline, but from a simple human heart. The rebel soldiers advanced. The court trembled. Some nobles hid behind their chairs. Others waited to see what the Empress would do. The Empress rose slowly from her throne. Her cloak swept the floor. Her crown glimmered like fire. Her presence filled the hall, greater than any storm, heavier than any shadow. Her voice cut the air. Stop! The soldiers froze. The rebel noble's face twisted with anger. My Empress, if you cannot act, then we must. You are blinded by this human's tricks. The Empress's eyes narrowed. For the first time, her mask broke. Her voice shook with fury, but also with pain. Blinded? She said. No. It is you who are blind. Blind to what truly matters. The rebel laughed harshly. And what matters, Empress? Mercy? Weakness? Do you think the galaxy will fear us if you bend your knee to a human? The Empress stepped closer, her power radiating like heat from a furnace. The galaxy may fear me, but fear has given me nothing. Not joy, not love, not laughter from my child. Only emptiness. The hall fell silent. Nobles stared wide-eyed. Never had she spoken so openly. The Empress turned her gaze to her daughter. For the first time in years, her face softened. Her voice broke as she whispered, I failed you. I thought protecting myself from pain would protect you too. But all I gave you was loneliness. The princess's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, Mother. The Empress's heart cracked wider, like ice breaking under the warmth of the sun. The rebel noble snarled, You are weak, Empress, and weakness will destroy us all. He raised his blade to strike. The princess screamed. The human stepped forward, shielding her with his own body. But before the blade could fall, the Empress lifted her hand. A shockwave of power exploded from her, rattling the crystal pillars, shaking the floor, and sending the noble stumbling back. His weapon clattered to the ground. The Empress's voice roared like thunder. You dare raise your hand against my daughter? Against the only light left in my life? Then you will learn the price of betrayal. The hall trembled. Guards dropped to their knees. Nobles cowered. The rebels froze, caught between fear and defiance. The Empress's heart had cracked open, but now the fire inside it was pouring out. She looked at the human. For a brief moment, her gaze softened. She saw him holding her daughter close, shielding her, ready to die for her. It shook her to the core, but her eyes quickly turned back to the rebels. Her voice dropped low, cold as death. You wanted strength? Then you will see it. The hall shook from the Empress's power. Her shockwave still echoed in the air, leaving cracks in the crystal floor. The rebel noble stumbled back, fear flashing in his eyes, yet his pride kept him standing. His soldiers froze, caught between their loyalty to him and their terror of their Empress. The court was silent. The nobles dared not breathe too loudly. The Empress's gaze swept across them, cold as winter, sharp as steel. For years they had seen her as unbreakable stone, untouchable ice. Now they saw fire, a fire that could burn them all. She turned her eyes to the rebel noble. You call me weak, she said, her voice deep and heavy. But it is you who are weak. You hide behind fear. You cling to cruelty thinking it gives you power. But cruelty is nothing compared to love. The noble spat on the floor. Love? Love will not hold an empire. Love will not make the galaxy bow. The Empress stepped closer. No. But love can give life. And without life, an empire is nothing but a tomb. Her words struck the hall like a blade. Nobles shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others glared, refusing to believe. The human still stood with the princess behind him, his hand protecting hers. He looked at the empress, his voice steady but quiet. "You are not weak for loving her," he said. "You are strong because you still can." The empress froze for a moment, those words cutting deeper than any blade. She looked at her daughter, small, fragile, but glowing with joy for the first time in years. The girl clung to the human as if he were her only safe place. The empress's heart ached. She wanted to pull her daughter close to protect her, but shame battled inside her. She had ignored the girl for so long. Did she even deserve to hold her now? The rebel noble saw her hesitation and shouted, "Look at her. Even now she doubts herself. She is lost. If we do not act, this human will destroy us all. Strike him down, Empress. Prove your strength." The guards tensed. The court waited. Everyone's eyes turned to her. The Empress raised her hand slowly, the human's breath caught. He pulled the princess closer, shielding her, ready for death. The princess cried out, "Mother, please, don't hurt him." Her voice cracked, desperate and trembling. She reached out her hand toward the throne, tears streaming down her face. The Empress's hand trembled. Her power gathered, bright and dangerous. One command and the human would fall. One word and her court would remain under fear, as it always had. But then, her daughter's voice echoed in her mind. "Mother, please." It was not just a cry. It was a plea for love, for kindness, for a family she had long been denied. The Empress's heart cracked wide open. She saw her daughter's lonely nights, her hidden tears, her silent suffering. She saw herself, so afraid of weakness that she had become weaker than anyone. Her hand lowered. The hall gasped. The Empress looked at the human, then at her daughter. Her voice was softer than anyone had ever heard before. "Dance again." The musicians froze, stunned. The court erupted in whispers. "She spares him? What is this madness? The Empress commands a dance?" The human blinked, uncertain. But the princess's face lit up with hope. She tugged at his hand. "Please," she whispered. "Dance with me again." He nodded gently, smiling at her. "Of course." The musicians hesitated, looking to the Empress. She gave a single sharp chunk to play. Music filled the hall once more, slow, graceful, heavy with meaning. The human stepped forward, guiding the princess into the dance again. Her laughter returned, bright and pure. Step by shaky step, she moved with him. The court watched, torn between awe and fear. The Empress stood still, her face calm but her eyes filled with something new, something none of them had ever seen. Warmth. The rebel noble's face twisted in fury. "This is weakness. This is betrayal of everything we are." He drew a hidden dagger from his cloak and rushed forward. The human saw the glint of the blade. He spun quickly, pulling the princess behind him. The court screamed. Guards shouted. The Empress's eyes blazed with fury. The noble's dagger slashed forward, aiming for the human's chest. The dagger flashed through the air. The human twisted, pulling the princess behind him. The blade cut across his shoulder, tearing his jacket and drawing blood. He staggered but did not let go of the girl's hand. The court erupted in chaos. Nobles screamed. Guards shouted and musicians dropped their instruments. The rebel noble lifted his dagger again, rage burning in his eyes. But before he could strike a second time, the Empress moved. Her hand rose, and with it came a wave of power greater than the first. A blast of shimmering energy struck the rebel like a storm. He was thrown across the hall, crashing into the wall with a sickening sound. His dagger clattered to the floor. The room went silent. The rebel gasped, blood on his lips, trying to rise. But the Empress's eyes burned like twin suns and her voice thundered across the hall. "You dare touch him? You dare raise your hand against my daughter? Then hear me now. Your treachery ends here." She lifted her hand again. The noble screamed in terror. The court watched, trembling, certain he would be destroyed. But then, the human spoke. "Wait." His voice was weak from pain, but steady. The Empress turned her eyes to him, shocked that he would dare interrupt her judgment. He stood tall, blood running down his arm, shielding the princess with his body. His eyes locked with the Empress's. "Do not kill him. Not like this. If you do, you will only prove him right, that your strength comes only from fear." The hall froze. The nobles looked from the human to their Empress, waiting for her reaction. The Empress's hand trembled. She had been ready to crush the rebel into dust, but the human's words pierced her heart like light breaking through darkness. Her daughter's small voice joined his. "Mother, please, show them you are more than fear." The Empress lowered her hand. The noble collapsed, trembling and broken. Guards rushed forward and seized him, dragging him away. The court stared in disbelief. The Empress had shown mercy, mercy that none had thought her capable of. She turned back to her daughter. The girl still held the human's hand tightly, her eyes wide with worry for him. Blood stained his sleeve, but he stood tall, refusing to let her feel afraid. The Empress's face softened. Slowly she stepped closer. Her voice, for the first time in years, was gentle. "My daughter." The princess looked up, tears in her eyes. The Empress knelt before her, something the court had never seen. She placed her hand on the girl's cheek, her eyes full of sorrow and love. "Forgive me," she whispered, "for the years I let you suffer alone, for the love I was too afraid to give." The princess broke into sobs and threw her arms around her mother. The Empress held her tightly, her cold mask finally gone. For the first time in forever, she was not the ruler of an empire. She was simply a mother. The court was stunned. Nobles whispered in shock. Guards lowered their weapons. Even the musicians bowed their heads, knowing they had witnessed something greater than power. The human stepped back, his chest heaving. He had no crown, no army, no title. Yet he had changed the heart of the most feared ruler in the galaxy. The Empress stood, still holding her daughter's hand. She looked at the court, her voice strong but different now, no longer cold but filled with warmth and iron together. "You will remember this day," she declared, "not as the day of rebellion, but as the day the empire was reborn. No longer will fear rule us. From this day forward, love will guide us." Her words thundered through the hall. Some nobles bowed, others trembled, but none dared defy her. The Empress turned to the human, her eyes softened again. "You risked your life for her," she said. "Why?" The human, still bleeding, smiled faintly. "Because she deserved to smile, because she is more than her weakness, and because sometimes kindness is stronger than power." The Empress stared at him for a long moment. Then, to the shock of everyone in the hall, she bowed her head slightly. "You have given me back my daughter," she said. "For that, I owe you more than I can ever repay." The human shook his head. "I don't want repayment, just promise me. She will never be alone again." The Empress's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That I swear." The hall erupted in murmurs. Nobles whispered of a new age, of a new empress, of the human who changed everything. The musicians began to play again, not by command but by choice. The sound was softer this time, filled with hope. The human looked at the princess. She smiled brightly, tears of joy still on her cheeks. "Dance with me again?" she whispered. Despite his wound, he laughed softly. "Always." They began to dance once more, not in fear, but in joy. The Empress watched, her heart no longer cold, but alive. For the first time, she smiled fully, and the court bowed in awe. Final closing. One simple dance, one act of kindness, one human who dared to care when no one else would, and in that moment an empire was forever changed.